Tommy Garrett had been running his repair shop for 12 years. The place wasn't much, just a corrugated metal building on the edge of Kepler Colony, surrounded by red dust and broken dreams. He wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days, leaving fresh grease stains over older ones. The shop smelled like burnt circuits and coffee that had been sitting in the pot since morning. That was fine with him. He'd gotten used to a lot of things over the years. The emergency beacon screaming through his radio speakers made him jump. Tommy turned up the volume. Some automated system was repeating the same message over and over. Distress call, unknown vessel heading down fast. Most people would have called the colony authorities and stayed put. But Tommy had never been most people. He looked at the wall clock, 3:47 a.m., and thought about his daughter Riley sleeping in the apartment above the shop. She was 16 now, old enough to stay alone for a couple hours. He grabbed his tool bag without really thinking about it. The bag was heavy, filled with every wrench, scanner, and piece of equipment he'd collected over the years. His hands moved on muscle memory alone. This was what he did. He fixed things. It was all he knew how to do. The desert was cold at night even though the days were brutal. Tommy drove his truck across rough terrain, following the direction the beacon had given him. The sky lit up orange as something massive came through the atmosphere. He could see it now, a ship easily the size of a small building spiraling down toward the sand. It hit hard, throwing up clouds of dust that covered everything. The impact was so violent that Tommy felt it from half a mile away, the shock wave rattling his truck. He pushed the accelerator down harder. When he got close, the ship was smoking. Real smoke, the kind that meant fires burning inside. Tommy pulled on a mask and grabbed his bag. He'd faced dangerous situations before. Nothing compared to the year Riley got sick. Nothing compared to sitting in hospital rooms watching your kid struggle to breathe, knowing you couldn't afford the treatment the doctors said she needed. That was real fear. A burning ship was just a problem to solve. The main hatch was jammed, but Tommy found a service panel that responded to manual override. His fingers worked quickly, pulling circuits and rewiring connections. After 5 minutes, the hatch hissed open. Inside, the ship was darker than anything he'd ever seen. Emergency lights cast everything in red, like being inside blood. He made his way through narrow corridors, following the sound of the ship's failing systems. The bridge was at the front, and that's where he found her. At first, Tommy thought she was made of glass. The being in the pilot's seat had skin that seemed to glow from inside, with patterns of light running through it like circuits. She was tall, maybe 8 feet, with long limbs and features that were beautiful in a way that didn't quite fit Tommy's understanding of beauty. Her eyes were closed. She wasn't moving. Tommy didn't hesitate. He checked for a pulse, or what he assumed would be a pulse on something like this. He found a heartbeat, fast and weak, somewhere in her chest. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Getting her back to his truck was harder than he expected. She was heavy and the corridors were narrow. Tommy's muscles burned by the time he had her in the passenger seat, held up by a seatbelt he'd rigged to keep her from falling over. He drove faster on the way back, taking corners too hard, pushing the truck to its limit. Riley was awake when he got back. He could see her face in the apartment window above the shop, scared. Tommy didn't have time to explain. He carried the alien woman downstairs into the shop, laying her out on his biggest workbench, the one he usually used for engine repairs. "Dad, what the hell is that?" Riley stood in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Something that needs fixing," Tommy said. He got his diagnostic scanner, the expensive one he'd saved for 3 years to buy, and started running it over her body. The readings didn't make sense at first. Her biology was completely different. But once his brain started translating the data, patterns emerged. Her ship's quantum core had been leaking radiation. She'd been exposed to lethal doses. Her body was already starting to shut down. Tommy worked all night. He found medical supplies in her ship, things that looked like nothing he'd ever seen, and figured out what each one did through trial and error. He stabilized her breathing. He created a radiation treatment using equipment he'd never used before, trusting his instincts and the basic principles of physics he'd learned decades ago. By the time the sun came up, painting the desert gold, she was breathing steady and even. Her skin had stopped its panicked flickering. She was going to live. Tommy sat down on a stool and realized his hands were shaking. He had no idea what came next. Saratha's eyes opened slowly. The first thing she felt was pain, sharp and electric, running through her entire body like lightning trapped under her skin. Then came confusion. The second thing was the smell. Something warm and bitter, nothing like the sterile recycled air of her ship. Coffee. A human beverage. She tried to sit up and couldn't. Her body wasn't responding right. She looked down and saw bandages wrapped around her arms and chest, made from materials she didn't recognize. The workbench she was lying on was covered in tools, some of them hers, most of them not. Through the open garage door, she could see the desert, pink and orange in the early morning light. That's when she saw him. The human was standing at a small station in the corner of the workshop, holding a chipped ceramic cup. He was pouring dark liquid from an ancient machine. His movements were slow, deliberate, like someone who'd been awake for far too long but didn't know how to stop. He had dirt under his fingernails. There was a tear in his shirt. His face was rough, unshaven, and completely exhausted. Sareth tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Only a rasp came out. The human turned immediately. His reaction was strange. Not fear, not awe, not the careful calculation she was used to seeing in others' eyes. Just concern. He walked over quickly, setting the coffee down on a nearby table. "Easy," he said, his voice soft. "You're okay. You've been out for about 14 hours. Your body needed rest." Sareth's mind was working fast, trying to process her ship. She could hear it through the walls, the distinctive hum of her quantum core. It was running. That should have been impossible. The core had been damaged beyond repair. Every expert in the Valerian Dominion had said so. She'd been traveling to a repair station on Kareth Prime when the cascade failure started. She remembered the alarms. She remembered losing consciousness. "My ship," she said, her voice still rough. "Fixed it," the human said simply. He picked up the coffee cup again and took a sip. "Or at least the core is. Rest of it needs work, but the dangerous stuff is handled." Sareth stared at him. "How long have you been awake?" "Since yesterday morning." "Don't really count anymore." He shrugged like this was normal. "You hungry? I can make something. Fair warning though, I'm not great at cooking." She wasn't hungry. She was confused. And something else, something she couldn't quite name. This human had fixed her ship. Not just fixed it, but had done it in ways that showed genuine understanding of quantum mechanics and alien engineering. The work was brilliant. Unconventional but brilliant. "Why?" she asked. Tommy looked up from his coffee. "Why what? Why did you do this? You could have called your authorities. You could have waited for official help. Instead, you risked your life entering a damaged alien vessel to save someone you didn't know." Tommy scratched his chin and seemed to think about it. "Because you needed help. That's it. That's the whole reason." Sareth processed this. In her world, everything was transactional. Every action had a calculated motivation behind it. People helped each other because they wanted something in return. They saved lives because it benefited them politically or financially. This concept, helping simply because help was needed, felt foreign. "I don't understand," she said. Tommy pulled up a chair and sat down next to the workbench. He looked tired enough to fall over. "Look, I don't know where you're from or what the rules are there, but here? When someone's hurt, you help them. That's just what you do. My daughter got really sick a few years back. Infection got into her lungs. We didn't have much money for treatment, and I couldn't work because I had to stay with her at the hospital. Some people, just people from the colony, people I barely knew, they brought us food. They helped pay some of the bills. Nobody asked for anything back. They just did it because it was the right thing to do." He paused and took another sip of coffee. "Your ship was dying. You were dying. I knew how to fix it, so I did. Simple as that." Sareth felt something shift inside her chest. She was beginning to understand something fundamental about this human, about humans in general, perhaps. They operated on a principle she'd only read about in ancient texts: compassion without agenda. "What's your name?" she asked. "Tommy. Tommy Harlow. And this is my shop, though I guess you're kind of taking up all my workspace right now." He smiled, but it wasn't mocking. It was genuine. "I am Sareth," she said quietly. "Well, Sareth, welcome to Kepler Colony. It's not much, but it's home." Over the next few hours, as Tommy sat beside her and talked about his life, about his struggles with money, about his daughter Riley and her medical bills, about barely making rent each month, Sareth realized the full weight of what had happened. This man had saved her without knowing who she was. Had he known, would he have treated her differently? The answer terrified her. In her experience, everything changed when people learned her identity. She decided not to tell him. Not yet. Not while everything felt real for the first time in her life. The sound came first, a deep, resonating hum that made Tommy's teeth ache. He was under Sareth's ship, working on the secondary power systems, when the whole building started to vibrate. Tools fell off shelves. The coffee maker rattled on its stand. Tommy slid out from under the vessel and stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. Through the open garage door, the sky was changing. Not gradually. All at once. 3 massive ships materialized overhead, so large they blocked out the sun. They weren't anything like commercial vessels. These were military. Tommy knew military when he saw it. The hulls were sleek and dark, covered in what looked like weapons systems. The ships moved with purpose, dropping lower until they were hovering directly above the colony. Tommy's heart started pounding. Inside the shop, Sareth had been resting on the workbench. She sat up suddenly, her entire body going rigid. Her skin, that beautiful crystalline skin, started flickering with patterns of light. Not the calm, gentle glow from before. This was urgent. Panicked. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." "What's happening?" Tommy asked, already knowing he wasn't going to like the answer. Before Sareth could respond, the shop's entrance exploded inward. Not literally, but a dozen armored figures stormed through, moving with military precision. They wore sleek suits that seemed to shift color, and they carried weapons that looked like nothing Tommy had ever seen. The lead figure, taller than the others and marked with symbols on his chest, pointed directly at Sareth. "Princess," he said, his voice carrying an accent that made every word sound formal and sharp. "We need to move. Now." Tommy's brain caught up to what his ears had just heard. Princess. Sareth was a princess. "Wait," Tommy said, stepping forward. "What's going on here?" The lead figure glanced at him like he was an insect. "Human, step aside. This doesn't concern you. She's in my shop. That makes it my concern." One of the other figures moved toward Tommy, but Sareth held up her hand. "Stop," she commanded, and something in her voice, something that hadn't been there before, made everyone obey. She looked at Tommy and he could see the conflict in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have told you." Outside, more ships were arriving. Not Valerian. These were smaller, civilian vessels with colony markings. Military personnel were establishing perimeters around the shop. Through the window, Tommy could see people being moved away from the area. An evacuation. The entire colony was being locked down because of one ship. Because of Sareth. "Who are you?" Tommy asked quietly. "Princess Sareth Valerix of the Valerian Dominion," she said, and the words sounded like they were being pulled out of her against her will. "I control 17 star systems. My family has held power for 3,000 years. I was traveling for diplomatic purposes when my ship failed." Tommy felt like the ground had shifted under his feet. He'd spent 3 days with this woman. He'd given her medicine he wasn't sure would work. He'd talked to her about his money problems, his struggles, his fears. And the entire time she was royalty. She was powerful. She was everything he wasn't. "We need to go," the lead security officer said. "The Empress has demanded your immediate return to the capital. There are political complications we don't have time to explain." "No," Sareth said. The word hung in the air. Everyone went still. "Princess, with respect, we don't have the authority to." "I'm not leaving," Sareth said louder now. Her skin was glowing brighter, patterns of light moving across her body like living things. "I'm staying here." "That's not possible," the officer said. "Your mother is demanding." "I don't care what my mother is demanding. I'm staying." Tommy watched this unfold like it was happening to someone else. The most powerful people in the galaxy were standing in his shop, in his space, and they were arguing about whether a princess could stay with a repairman from a backwater colony. "You can't stay here," the officer said, his voice dropping. It was almost threatening. "You have responsibilities. You have a dominion to run. You have treaties to negotiate." "Then send representatives," Sareth said. "But I'm not leaving. Not yet." Riley appeared in the doorway to the apartment stairs, still in her pajamas, looking absolutely terrified. When she saw the armed security officers, she froze. "It's okay," Tommy called to her, trying to sound like he believed it. "Stay upstairs." Riley didn't move. Her eyes were locked on Sareth, then back to Tommy, trying to understand what was happening. The lead officer's radio crackled with urgent communications in a language Tommy didn't understand. His expression grew darker with each transmission. He looked at Sareth, and Tommy could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The weight of authority, the impossibility of refusing a princess, the political nightmare this was creating. "The Empress is en route," he said finally. "She will be here in 6 hours. You will wait. But know this, Princess, the political consequences of this delay will be severe." Sareth nodded, but she didn't look away from Tommy. "I understand." As the security team established positions around the shop, cordoning it off from the rest of the colony, Tommy realized something. He'd saved a princess without knowing it. And now, somehow he was caught in something much bigger than himself. The comfortable, simple life he'd built was about to explode into complications he couldn't even imagine. He looked at Riley, still frozen on the stairs. "Make some coffee," he said to her quietly. "I think we're going to need it." The Valerian Empress arrived exactly on schedule. Her ship descended through the atmosphere like a falling star, massive and deliberate. It landed just outside the colony, and when she emerged, the entire settlement seemed to hold its breath. She was magnificent in a way that made Tommy understand for the first time what true power looked like. She was even taller than Sareth, with skin that shifted between deep purples and blues. Her clothing wasn't just fabric, it seemed to be made of light itself, patterns and symbols flowing across her form. She wore a crown that defied gravity, floating several inches above her head. Dozens of guards flanked her, and diplomatic officials in formal dress followed behind. The Empress walked into Tommy's repair shop like she was walking into her own throne room. The security officers inside immediately straightened, showing respect Tommy had never seen directed at anyone. Sareth stood and faced her mother. "I know what you're going to say." "Do you?" the Empress interrupted. Her voice was deep and carried the weight of authority that came from ruling millions. "Do you truly understand what your actions have caused? The Coalition of Seven is threatening to withdraw from the trade agreement. The Merchants Guild is demanding explanations. Every political rival we have is using this incident as ammunition against our family." "Mother, You disappeared without explanation. Your security detail lost track of you for 72 hours. Do you understand the implications? We had to tell them you were on a classified diplomatic mission. We had to lie to cover your negligence." Tommy watched this exchange and felt completely out of place. He was just a repairman. This wasn't his world. He should have stayed silent, but he'd never been good at that. "With respect," he said quietly, "she was unconscious for most of that time." The Empress turned her full attention to Tommy. It felt like being looked at by the sun. Her eyes were ancient and intelligent, and they saw everything. "You are the human," she said. It wasn't a question. "Tommy Harlow," he said. He didn't bow. He didn't grovel. Those things felt wrong, and Tommy had learned a long time ago to trust his instincts. "Your daughter's ship crashed near here. I fixed it. That's all." "That is not all," the Empress said. She moved closer, studying him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "My daughter refused to leave this planet. She refused to return to her duties. She refused to acknowledge her responsibilities to an entire dominion." "For what? For you?" "For the chance to understand something," Tommy said. He glanced at Sareth, then back to the Empress. "Your daughter is curious. She wants to learn. That's not a flaw. That's strength." The Empress was silent for a long moment. Riley, still upstairs in the apartment, peeked down through the gap in the door, watching everything. "You fixed a Valerian quantum core using human technology," the Empress said. "It wasn't a question." "I fixed what I could with what I had," Tommy corrected. "Your daughter's ship is advanced. Mine is basic. But the principles are the same. Energy, movement, balance. Those things don't change whether you're human or Valerian." "Fascinating." The Empress walked around the shop, examining the workbench, the tools, the half-repaired systems. "And you did this without knowledge of my daughter's identity? Without expectation of reward? Why would I need a reward for helping someone?" Tommy asked. "She needed help. I helped. That's how it works where I come from." The Empress turned back to face him fully. There was something different in her expression now, not softness exactly, but a kind of recognition. "In my world, Tommy Harlow, everything has value. Everything has a price. Power, knowledge, resources, they are all commodities to be traded and negotiated. To encounter someone who helps simply because help is needed, it is unexpected." She paused, and Tommy could see her making calculations, weighing options in her mind. "Tell me, what do you want?" the Empress asked. "Credits? Technology? A position of power?" "I want Riley to have a good life," Tommy said immediately. "I want her to go to university if she wants to. I want her to have opportunities one never had. That's it." The Empress nodded slowly. "My daughter sees something in you. Something in your species, perhaps. She believes that human innovation, your ability to solve problems with limited resources, could benefit the Valerian Dominion significantly." Tommy didn't say anything. He was waiting for the other part, the part where the catch would reveal itself. "I am prepared to make you an offer," the Empress continued. "You would become the innovation director for the Valerian Dominion. Your task would be to study human problem-solving methods and integrate them with our technology. You would have access to resources beyond your comprehension. Your daughter would receive the finest education in 17 star systems. Your colony would receive technological aid that would transform their society. She let that settle for a moment. However, she said, it would require you to leave this place. You would live aboard my flagship. You would travel between star systems. You would be away from Earth, away from everything you know for an indefinite period. Tommy's stomach dropped. He looked at Sareth, then back at the Empress. What if I say no? He asked. Then my daughter returns with me and life goes on as it always has. Your colony receives no aid. Your daughter continues to struggle financially. And my daughter spends the rest of her life wondering what could have been. It was a perfect trap. Not cruel but perfectly constructed. The Empress wasn't threatening him. She was simply presenting the reality of the situation. Help humanity and have everything, or refuse and keep nothing. I need to think about it, Tommy said. The Empress smiled and it transformed her entire face. Of course. You have until morning. But I suspect you already know what your answer will be. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Tommy Harlow. You said you could see where my daughter gets her qualities. Thank you for that. In my world, compliments are often weapons. It is refreshing to encounter genuine ones. As she left the shop, her guards following in perfect formation, Tommy sat down on his workbench. Riley came downstairs slowly, her eyes wide. Dad, she said. What just happened? I think, Tommy said quietly, our lives just changed. Tommy didn't sleep that night. He sat in his shop, surrounded by the tools he'd used for 12 years, and thought about everything he was about to lose. The worn wooden workbench where he'd fixed 1,000 broken things. The apartment upstairs where Riley had grown up. The coffee maker that never worked quite right. The view of the desert at sunrise. All of it would become memory. But then he thought about Riley's medical bills. He thought about the way her eyes had lit up when the Empress mentioned the finest education in 17 star systems. He thought about Sareth's expression when she'd refused to leave, when she'd chosen understanding over duty. And he thought about what the Empress had said, that in her world, helping without expectation of reward was almost unthinkable. At dawn he told the Empress yes. The preparation was quick and efficient. The Valerian government moved like a machine. Within hours, a crew arrived to pack up the shop. They treated his tools with reverence, carefully storing each one in specialized containers. Tommy wanted to tell them to be careful, that these were just tools, but he realized they understood something he was only beginning to learn. Everything mattered. Everything had value. Riley moved through the apartment like a ghost, choosing what to take. She picked her old photographs, the ones printed on actual paper, because she liked holding them. She packed her school books, even though the Empress had assured her they would have better resources. She took her favorite jacket, worn and patched in places, because it reminded her of home. Dad, is this real? She asked at one point, sitting on her bed surrounded by half-packed boxes. I think so, Tommy said. But we'll figure it out together. That's all we've ever done anyway. The transport ship arrived that afternoon. It was smaller than the Empress's flagship but still massive, easily 10 times the size of Tommy's repair shop. The interior was all white walls and soft lighting. Everything was clean and precise and utterly foreign. A young Valerian officer, barely older than Riley, was assigned to help them settle in. Her name was something that sounded like musical notes, but she told them to call her Val. First time off-world? Val asked Riley. First time everything, Riley said quietly. As they boarded, Tommy took one last look at Kepler Colony. People had gathered to watch the Valerian ships depart. Some of them Tommy knew. Some of them had been his friends. They watched in silence as he left his entire life behind. The journey to the Empress's flagship took 6 hours. Tommy spent most of it in the observation deck with Riley, watching space unfold around them. The stars looked different out here, closer somehow, more real. Riley pressed her face against the transparent aluminum, her breath fogging the surface. It's beautiful, she whispered. Sareth found them there. She moved quietly, her crystalline form catching the starlight, making her glow like a living constellation. Your quarters are prepared, she said. The Empress is holding a formal dinner tonight to introduce you to the council. They want to hear your ideas about human innovation. Tommy turned to face her. I'm not a politician, Sareth. I'm a mechanic. I don't know how to talk to councils. You'll be fine, Sareth said, and she smiled. There was something different about her now. She looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Just be honest. That's what impressed everyone before. The dinner was overwhelming. The council chamber was massive, with a domed ceiling that showed real-time images of the cosmos. The Valerian nobles wore formal clothing that seemed to shift and flow with their emotions. They asked Tommy questions about human engineering, about his methods, about how he solved problems with limited resources. Tommy answered honestly. He talked about improvisation, about understanding limitations and working within them, about how sometimes the best solutions came from necessity, not abundance. The council listened intently, taking notes on holographic displays. By the end of the evening, they'd approved his first project, a collaborative design team of human and Valerian engineers working together to create a new class of exploration vessels. Ships that combined human ingenuity with Valerian technology. 3 months later, Tommy stood on a viewing platform aboard the flagship, watching the first ship launch. It was beautiful. The hull design had come from human hands, sleek and efficient, with an elegance born from solving problems with minimal resources. But the internal systems were purely Valerian, capable of traveling through space in ways that should have been impossible. Riley stood beside him, wearing the uniform of the Innovation Academy. She'd tested into advanced engineering courses within weeks. She was happier than Tommy had ever seen her. "They want me to lead the next design team," she said, still staring at the launching ship in awe. "Dad, they think I'm ready." "You are ready," Tommy said. "You've always been ready. You just needed the chance." Sareth joined them, her presence announced by the soft hum of her arrival. She changed too. She was still a princess, still formal when required, but there was something more relaxed about her now. She'd found a balance between duty and curiosity. "The launch was successful," she said. "The Empress is very pleased. She's already approved funding for the next 5 designs." "It's strange," Tommy said, watching the ship disappear into the stars. "A few months ago I was just trying to keep my shop running and pay the bills. Now I'm designing ships that'll explore galaxies." "You were always going to do something remarkable," Sareth said. "You just needed someone to get hurt for you to realize it." Tommy laughed, a real, genuine laugh that echoed across the platform. "That's one way to put it." Riley looked between them, understanding something fundamental. "You two are going to keep doing this, aren't you? Finding ways to bring humans and Valorians together." "It's what we're good at," Tommy said. As the 3 of them watched the stars, Tommy realized that the Empress had been right that morning in his shop. He'd known what his answer would be all along. Because helping someone, really helping them without expectation of reward, created something stronger than any contract or obligation. It created partnership. It created purpose. And sometimes the greatest opportunities in life came not from seeking them out, but from simply being decent to someone in need and seeing where it led. The galaxy, Tommy thought, was a lot bigger than Kepler Colony. But the principles that mattered, respect, partnership, genuine connection, those were universal. They worked the same everywhere.